Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan.
Find any trigger warnings in our episode notes. We're happy you're joining us and enjoy the show. Welcome to the podcast. Are your fingers feeling frigid and cold and useless? Are you feeling wrinkly and tired? Because if so, we've got the right book for you today.
Oh, I was going to say, or you just got out of a hot bath.
Yeah, well, I was trying to make it ambiguous and suspenseful.
So suspenseful.
What are we reading today?
Rigid fingers.
Yeah, all like clawed in, and you want to do something with them, but you can't move them.
That's called arthritis. Well, what kind of horror book would have arthritis involved? The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Fracassi.
This was a book that Amber picked because she was looking up books to read, or what's the deal? How did this come about?
Yeah, so this one was a blind pick because this one just came out not that long ago. And over the summer when we were picking out our reading list for this year or this season, however you want to call it, this title showed up as a September release. And I loved the title. I thought it was very clever. And I figured it would be a very unique take on a slasher, which I believe it was, because I can't think of any other slasher book that takes place in a retirement home.
A movie just came out with Pete Davidson in it that's a retirement home horror movie, but it got pretty bad reviews.
And that's a movie.
Yeah, but still, exact same setting, which is interesting. I don't even remember the name of it, but it's out there and some of you probably do. Let's talk about this author. Philip Fracassi is a Bram Stoker and British Fantasy Award nominated author. He's written the novels A Child Alone with Strangers, Gothic, Boys in the Valley, The Third Rule of Time Travel, and The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre. He is also the author of the story collections Behold the Void, Beneath a Pale Sky, and No One is Safe. And I have a fun fact. He got the idea for the story that we're talking about today, Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre, when he was on a cross-country road trip with his wife doing research for his book, The Boys in the Valley. And they stayed at an old hotel in Virginia. And he was like, ooh, this seems more like a retirement home. And then he wrote a book about it.
That's a lot like The Shining, how Stephen King stayed at
that's
that
true, yeah.
hotel and then wrote a book out of it.
Yeah.
So cool. I guess we got to go do some road trips and stay in some old hotels and such.
I feel like we somehow managed to connect every episode to back to The Shining.
I mean, it's a classic. Is that a bad thing?
No, it's fun. It becomes a game of how can we link back to The Shining?
Well,
anyway.
It's kind of like, Stephen King has done everything. So maybe this is just a sign that, what was it? His second novel had everything he needed.
Wasn't the second novel Carrie? I think it was Salem's Lot, Carrie, The Shining.
Right. The Shining was the third
Or
one.
The Shining was second.
No, I think you're right. I think Carrie was second. Okay, regardless, this is not a Stephen King podcast.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, that is a cool fact.
Yeah.
But this book takes place in New York, correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us a summary of this book?
Rose DuBois is not your average final girl. She's in her late 70s, living out her golden years at the Autumn Springs Retirement Home. When one of her friends dies alone in her apartment, Rose isn't too concerned. Wow, I hadn't read this before. That's kind of rude. Okay. Rose isn't too concerned. Accidents happen, especially at this age. Then another resident drops dead, and another. With bodies stacking up, Rose can't help but wonder, are these accidents, old age, or something far more sinister? Together with her best friend Miller, Rose begins to investigate. The further she digs, the more convinced she becomes there's a killer on the loose at Autumn Springs. And if she isn't careful, Rose may be their next victim.
So this is at least the second time where this description comes from, I don't know, publisher or press.
It's usually the publisher.
Yeah, the publisher, right? And they have it
Marketing
here
department.
When one of her friends dies alone in her apartment, Rose isn't too concerned. But that's not true. In the book, she's like, this is weird.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if the marketing team actually reads these books before they put it together.
I mean, it's such like a minor thing that like
That happened with Mayfly, right?
I think
it was
so.
Mayfly.
Was it? Do you remember what the description was?
It was that she started killing because of she met Gideon,
but she
and
had
like, her dark side comes out, but she already had like
she had kills already.
Yeah, so
come on, a marketing team, you got to read your books.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's important to find a good marketing team and or vet what they write. I don't know. I mean, it's not a huge deal, like you said, but it is interesting how it's a bit of a trend. But also, I think the point is that people don't typically read that part after they've read the book.
Yeah,
so it's supposed
not.
to like catch potential readers' interest, not so much adhere to what the book actually says. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, so this book is fun because we were spending time at a retirement home not that long ago and going, I don't know, you were going once a week. I was going maybe every other week.
At least once a week, yeah.
And we did that for, I don't know, how long did your Oma live by us? 2 years? 2.5 years? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
So we had the experience that was described in this book, which made it fun.
Well, there wasn't a serial killer around unless you consider COVID. Yeah.
But just like kind of
being around retired people in a retirement home, hanging out, playing cards, drinking whiskey, doing the things you do.
And just having like the description of this sounds it was fun to read because I could picture it with the retirement home that your Oma was in, where it's just like front lobby with rooms for activities and stuff like that, and then wings where you stay. So you're basically just like your life is shuffling around where you live and like the main lobby and the restaurants, and they have shuttles and buses that take you downtown and stuff, but just
or on adventures and such.
And what's interesting, and this would be helpful for me since I don't know where anything is they have like color coding on the walkways. Like red goes to the medical center, and I think blue and green go to the different living areas.
In the book, yeah.
Yeah, in the book. So
yeah, that would help you. I think the major difference, though, between my Oma's retirement home and the one in this book, besides the serial killer, is the outside setting. So my Oma was in a retirement home that was like in the middle of town. And this one is like on the edge of a forest with a big field, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Actually, you could think of The Shining, the kind of like the overlook where it's secluded except for a train track that runs surprisingly close. I mean, it seems like they're in the middle of nowhere.
Rose's room.
Yeah, and they're in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, it reminds me of when you're driving in deep rural areas, right? And there's all this land, and they build the houses on top of the main road. So you've all this space, to have peace and quiet, and then the houses are built like right on the road, so you're always hearing cars and getting same thing with this train. I don't know.
Yeah, they have a big green space behind the not apartments. I guess you could still call them apartments, but yeah, big green space in the back. And also, unlike your Oma's retirement home, it's got a creepy old asylum that's like derelict and unused and locked up, but just like sits out there untouched.
Yeah, and it's the way I pictured it was like an old barn.
Yeah. But just more like metal? I don't know. When I think of asylum,
I
think more metal and wood.
Because
maybe wood too.
It eventually gets burnt down.
It does.
Wouldn't that be wood?
Wouldn't you need wood?
Wouldn't you not be able to burn down metal unless it's like incredibly hot?
Yeah, so it's just creepy. I mean, it's like you're old and you're in your retirement home room.
That does sound creepy.
And you look out the window and there's like an old creepy building, and you're just like, I'm 80.
What? Wow. Ageism, what?
That's what I'm going to think when I'm 80. I think that now, and I'm half that.
Yeah, I know. Our running joke is that you are an old man, and you've been an old man since you were 20 years old, so...
All right, let's set it up. Let's put some cards on the table here. The cards being our main characters. We've talked a little bit about Rose DuBois, who is the main character, the MC of our story, and her friends Miller and
Well, she has a couple of friends.
She has a couple of friends, but they end up dying, and so like
She's
discarded
got
them from my memory.
her friend Angela. There's Gopi. There's the Baxter sisters. I don't know if they'd be considered her friends. There's Tatum. And there's a number of people.
Okay, yeah. It's like
Maureen,
And is she new to the retirement home when the book opens, or has she been there?
She's been there for a while, I think, but like a few years. But she moved there to obviously retire, but her daughter wants her to move in with her because her daughter just bought a house with her boyfriend, and her daughter has a kid, and they had a tiny townhouse or apartment or something. And Rose was like, no, I can't live with you. There's not enough space. But now I guess they've moved. They want her to move in. And she's like, well, I have my life here and I don't really want to move. And I don't want to be in your hair, So she has this pull to leave, but she likes where she is because she has her friends and such.
Yeah. And she's like, if I live with you, then all of a sudden I become like the cook and the maid or like whatever it is, you end up getting into a pattern that's dependent on living with other people. So as much as there's probably an appeal to be by her grandson and stuff like that, it's also like there is some autonomy in the retirement home. Even though at the same time from the day to day, it seems like a kind of purgatory, like just going from your apartment to the main lobby. But I don't know, when you're 82, maybe that's
like
enough.
your life. You go from the bedroom to your office, back to the bedroom, and boom, there's your day. Oh, you might go to the kitchen once or twice.
I'll do great. I'm going to prosper in a retirement home.
Yeah, you will. She does also see her family quite a bit. She goes and visits a lot.
Yeah, she has a good relationship with her daughter.
Her daughter's not so far that it's hard to visit frequently. And I think her grandson's name is Roy, and I think he's like 7 or 8, correct?
8 sounds young. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So Rose is inseparable with her best friend, Miller. His name is Beauregard Mason Miller, to be exact. And he's very adamant about saying that's his name, but then he generally goes by his last name. So that does come up later on in the story. But Miller and Rose are always doing everything together, and Rose is pretty convinced that Miller has a crush on her. Actually, he's told her that he likes her, but she's again happy with her independence. She doesn't want to get into any relationship or anything like that. She's pretty content, I'd say.
Yeah, she's like, I'm 82 or however old she is. And
I think she's 78.
Oh, okay. Oh man, taking years away from her. But yeah, like, why do I want to get into this boyfriend-girlfriend shit when I'm 82?
I've done that. And,
yeah.
And it turns out she had a bit of a rocky past with her ex-husband.
Yeah, he was a jerk. So she
has some trauma around that.
Yeah, she doesn't trust men. And
rightfully so.
It's just chilling. I mean, I think I'd just be chilling too at that point.
Mm-hmm. And they have some raging parties.
Yeah, some good drinking going on too.
Yeah, they at one point they play a game where they turn off all the lights and people are supposed to like get down on the ground and hide. I'm like, oh my god,
that seemed really unsafe.
I would struggle with asking adults my age to do that, and I'm like, you want. And some of these people were definitely in their 80s. I'm like, you want people in their 80s stumbling around your apartment, getting down on the ground, and then one person's walking around tapping on people's shoulders in the dark. I'm like, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Which brings up one of the issues that I had with this book, which was the age appropriateness of some of the things that the characters do and how they talk and such. It felt not quite at that age appropriate, I guess. It seemed like younger people were doing this stuff, playing this game in the dark, or the way that they would talk sometimes just felt like adults, but not retirement age adults. Because, as generations do, your lingo changes and mindsets change, and older generations tend to have different ways of talking. And I feel like a bit of that was lacking in this story.
Yeah, I thought it did a pretty good job of like it brought up some of their ailments and some of the issues of how to get to different places, of like taking the stairs versus, I don't know, going down the hall, or like these things that seem very basic but are important to day-to-day life as an older person. But then, yeah, whenever there's a dramatic scene, the characters would be like, what the fuck? And it seems like they all had that kind of, like, that was the intense language, is they'd start throwing fuck around to like show that they were upset or scared or whatever. But
Meanwhile,
like
anytime I would say that, my grandmother would look at me and be like, "Oh my God, don't use those foul words." You know, and to be fair, like my parents swear, but I don't know. There's, I guess in my brain, in my mind, these people should be my grandparents' age. So like silent generation.
Well, I mean, the book probably takes place like now.
So that's actually getting into baby boomers.
Yeah, close to that.
It's kind of on the cusp. So, but I don't know. I mean, your dad's also in a retirement home area, and it's a different setup than my Oma's was, or is. I guess it still exists. But yeah, again, like it just feels like the people don't quite fit.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the characters. I thought they were well fleshed out. I thought that each person had their own individual personality, and it played out well, and it helped with the mystery in some aspects. And it's a mild complaint, but it was a little noticeable to me. I was like ready for all these old idioms coming out and playing up on like, oh, we're gonna listen to Frank Sinatra and drink martinis, and like that wasn't really the vibe that I got. It felt like a slasher story that just happened to take place in a retirement home.
Yeah, I got that feeling too.
In that regard of like characterization.
All right, let's talk about, we know there's old people here, right? So what's happening to these old people? What happens is,
well, they live here.
They live here, and then they start dropping. And here's the thing is, when people die at a retirement home, they have a process, like this place has a medical facility and a morgue where they'll store people to be taken away after they're dead. They don't have like a hospital on site, right? But they have basic medical facility like hospice and stuff like that.
Yeah, they have a wing at their retirement home that is more hospice, and the nurses and doctors are more hands-on for people who have like dementia and more physical and mental needs for support. But it's not like they have an ER there. So if anything were to seriously happen, like if someone were to fall and break their leg or something, they still have to call an ambulance. Yeah.
But when people start dying here, the thought is kind of like, well, you're at a retirement home. Old people die. There are a couple of suicides. A couple characters slip and fall. And so it's like, well, yeah, they're old. And sometimes when you're old, you get depressed. Happens. You lose your balance, like whatever. But Rose ain't no sucker because she watches true crime with her friend Miller all the time.
Love it. Gotta love a true crime nut.
Yeah, so she's like, I think there's some foul play going on. And that basically kicks off the book, is like, okay, people are getting killed at a retirement home. That sounds ridiculous. But let's get to the bottom of it, because no one's taking it as seriously as they should.
And that, I think, is what is like the crux of this book, right? Which is ageism and a bit of ableism, and it has that final girl vibe of like no one believes her when she's saying, I don't think this is an accident. And the detective Hastings.
That one came right off the top of my head.
Nice. Detective Hastings starts to believe her pretty early on, but even he's gaslit by his superiors being like, no, man, this is not a serial killer. stop trying to find problems where they don't exist.
Because that creates more headaches for the police department, right? Because then it's like, well, if we suspect a killer, we should do an autopsy and like exhume some of the old
more paperwork and
bodies and stuff like that. And it's like, nah, they're just old people dying.
Patrols, and yeah, there's a lot to it. And it just looks bad, right? When there's a serial killer around, like the police don't like that because it makes it look like they can't do their job. Anyway, going back to how I feel this is one of the main points of the book is the ageism in this, talking about how when people get to a certain age, they start to be treated like children again, not believed, written off. The older generation has a tendency to be written off by younger generations, like, oh, we know better and such. And I think that Fracassi did a really good job of putting that in this book. Like, those things do exist, and he touches on those in a good way that make the murders and makes the story more tense, right? It builds the tension because it's the final girl trope, but in an ageism way.
Yeah. So Rose has a good relationship with her daughter. They see each other fairly often and talk on the phone and stuff like that. While some of the other characters in the retirement have no family or just aren't close to their family anymore, whether because their kids are too busy or not interested or any of these things. So it does bring into context the idea of like how important friendships and relationships are at this age, because you really can't take anything for granted, even potentially your own family.
Yeah, there's a really sad part in the book when everyone in the retirement home realizes that there's a murderer, and they all start calling their children, basically, for the most part, asking if they can come stay with them. And there's, I think, like 4 or 5 instances, like 4 or 5 sections of different people calling their children. And they're all just like, oh, it's not a good time. Oh, we're busy. Oh, we're going out of town. Like, we'll see you soon. You know, they're very flippant and like, oh, our life's too busy for you. We can't help you. I think, to be fair though, the older people weren't really saying there's a murderer here, so please take me in. I don't know.
Why were they so coy about it?
I don't know, but
people will be dying and I need a place to stay.
Get me the fuck out of here. But it was sad because, you know, they'd hang up and say like, I love you. And like, they're sitting there thinking they're going to die. It kind of reminded me of like the Titanic movie when they're all like, there's like the old couple laying on the bed hugging, you know, as the water's rushing under them. Aww. It had that like finality of, okay, well, I love you, but you're too busy for me. And that was really good symbolism and very sad.
Rose is lucky to have Sybil in their relationship because some of the other residents are all alone and neglected.
Most of them seem to be, yeah. Well, actually, I think about like half of them leave. But still, that's half that have nowhere to go, which is very sad.
And having to get up and leave when you're there because you're old and tired, it's got to suck.
Well, moving at any point is hard. Even if it's like temporary, I guess. He also has a positive message about age too. And it's around that same time where everyone knows that there's this murderer. They call their families, and most families are too busy or put them off and pretty much say, no, you're not part of our life. This is inconvenient for us. But then the residents come together on their own and say, well, we have each other, you know, and that's one of the nice things about retirement home, right? Is you're not alone. That was my Oma's situation. She was living alone. All her friends were either dead or so far away that she never saw them. She also couldn't drive, so she was very isolated. So moving to a retirement home gave her the ability to she played cards like at least almost every night, right? Like at least twice a week she had the girls over into her a little apartment room and they'd play cards, and it's great. So it was sad, but it was also positive that like it showed that, you know, we have each other. And I think they all have like a moment of hysterical laughter where they're talking about how just ridiculous the whole situation is. And so it was, you know, it's not all sad and dreary. There are definitely some positive and fun moments in the book too.
Let's talk about the early suspects.
Oh, okay.
We can start with the Baxter Sisters.
They're great.
There's
I want to be
also
a Baxter sister. If I was in a retirement home, I'd find like my two best friends and we would become the Baxter Sisters.
Yeah, I actually really like their story because there are 3 sisters who are living in their retirement home together in a single room, which is pretty crowded. And,
yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't do that part. But.
Yeah, and they're very witchy. They wear all black, and they like to...
They're literally witches. Like they go and they do...
Okay, I guess that's not witchy then.
Do cast
they
spells
are witches.
Yeah.
But one of the details I like about the book is that everyone's like, ooh, spooky witches. And they think that like in their homes, they'll have like frogs' feet and like eyeballs in jars and stuff. But there's a point where they have some people going to them in the book because they're so desperate to help find the killer that they go into their apartment and it's just like 3 neatly stacked bunk beds and like a very orderly kitchen. And they're like, oh, I guess we shouldn't have thought of these sisters as terrible, like ugly earth witches. They're actually just like living together and relying on each other while trying to summon demons.
God forbid they wear black. No, they're trying to
summon demon like Horus or something.
Oh, right. But
not Horus.
To protect them.
Yes.
They're trying to summon a demon. So they go into the
old asylum.
The old asylum behind the building, and they have they set up candles and they have a whole ceremony where they are attempting to summon a demon who they want to come and protect them. One of the 3 would be sacrificed to protect the other 2 from the murderer. And
sacrificed as in giving up your soul, which I guess is eternal sacrifice.
I mean, okay.
So,
I don't know what else to call that, I guess.
They wouldn't die immediately. It did explain later that when they died, their soul would be given up. So it's not like they'd be stricken down.
Okay, but they would sacrifice their soul to save the other 2. And it was random. They didn't know who it would be. It was like a rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, they drew straws.
But yeah, so I really enjoyed them. So they were an early suspect, especially suspects because they were going to the asylum and doing.
Yeah, and then this was in early
things.
days when just a few of the people were starting to die. And the first death being someone who falls down and breaks their hip and their neck in their bathroom and is found in their bathtub. So interesting.
Oops, they slipped, right?
Oops, yeah. And then the second death is some guy who like cuts his wrists all up with a knife, and they're like, "Oh, it's a suicide."
But the first one, like, she actually gets her head like stomped in.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's not a oopsie slip. It's I'm going to crush your head and then make it look like you slipped.
Which brings about suspect number 2, Mr. Blackwell, who is the superintendent of the retirement home, and he's like a tall, lanky, young guy, somebody who would have the strength to overcome these old people in the middle of the night, and also somebody who has the skeleton key so they could easily get around.
He's always there. Whenever they need him, he's already there. And this detail kind of threw me off. I think it was supposed to be a red herring, but Rose kept commenting on how he was always well-kempt and always in a suit.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for something to come of that, and I don't know. I guess
maybe like that he's meticulous in the way that, and a killer also needs to be meticulous.
Yeah,
maybe.
I suppose. But I was waiting for like at the end, like he'd be in jeans and a short sleeve shirt.
I think there is one scene where he's kind of dressed down.
So after our first death, we have a second one, which is poised to look like a suicide, and then some of the deaths start to fit with like the person's personality. One person's killed while playing chess, and another person is fed hallucinogenics and like jumps out their window, which I'm sorry, I would have a hard time getting out of my window, not to mention being in your 80s. He climbs up a huge tower and thinks that he is being abducted by aliens. And then he thinks he's going into a spaceship and then gets pushed off of this thing. And so again, they say, oh, he was sad. So he went outside and climbed this thing and jumped off. It's like, what? That was... And I think around that time is when there are enough deaths where the police are starting to say, okay, maybe you're on to something here, Rose.
Yeah, because people are dying from different kinds of hallucinogenics that they're being fed, that's being like slipped into their medications, which of course nobody would notice because they take so many medications anyway, right? That it's easy to slip something into one of their drinks or add in an extra pill here or there, and maybe they won't see. So we get characters doing some pretty wild things. There's this one guy, Mickey, who was like used to be a football player, and he's a big gentle giant, but then he gets like just totally fucked up on drugs unbeknownst to him and becomes very big and violent and out of control and doesn't understand it, which makes it even more crazy, and ends up being in hospice and like strapped down to a gurney.
Yeah, like solitary confinement kind of thing.
Yeah, and nobody's really listening to him. They're just like, this is a big guy and he got violent. We need to strap him down. Not really caring about the fact that he had no record of being violent or out of control, and not thinking about what could be causing this. We have all these different characters being disposed of or being toyed with to a point where we know that the killer is somebody within the community who knows the characters personally and how to do things to specifically mess with them.
So we have the Baxter Sisters. We have the
superintendent, I think is the right word.
Yeah, the superintendent. Blackwell. I was very suspect of Miller for like most of the story, and it became one of those things where it's like, oh, it's totally Miller. Oh, wait, but it probably isn't, but it's meant to look like it is. I was starting to do that circular argument of like, it's totally Miller. No, it can't be Miller, but it has to be Miller. Did you feel that at all with him, or were you?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's definitely pointed toward him, but it's in a way again where it's like feels like it's being dangled in front of you, because it's sort of like at certain points when some characters die, he's not there because like once he had a stomach ache or something. But another character vied for him then. And then other times, just like suspicious in the ways of not being around when certain things happen and being secretive. Apparently he doesn't really open up about his past very much. At the very end of the book, he mentions he has a daughter, and it was the first time that Rose had heard that, even though they're such good friends. So,
which is also hypocritical because Rose doesn't tell Miller about her past with her husband until the very end.
Yeah.
So for her to be like, oh, he didn't tell me, and be like, well, neither did you, bitch. Like, come on. Double standard, what? So one of Rose's friends is Tatum. I feel like we should talk about Tatum. He is a sweetheart. He lives in the hospice section, and he has really, really bad dementia. So he never really knows where he is. He's constantly looking for his dog, but his dog died like 10 years ago. And Rose often finds him out sitting by the pond, and we'll go sit with him and talk to him for a while. And then he'll start asking about his dog, needing to find his dog. And then she's like, oh, well, maybe, go inside. And so they contain him in a sense so that he doesn't just wander off into the woods looking for his dog and get lost. But he does have a pretty free movement throughout the grounds for someone with dementia. But I just loved Rose's relationship with him. Is very sweet, and I thought showed the most gentle side of Rose in the story.
Yeah, I think the best moments in the story are when Fracassi slows it down and talks about these character moments of like relating with somebody who has such a different backstory from your own. And yeah, her and Tatum are some of the good scenes. Thinking about how she wishes she knew him before. She'll often think, I spent time with him to give him comfort, but I wonder what he was like when he was all the way there.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because he's, for a brief moment, it could be like, oh, well, maybe he's faking it and is a murderer. But it becomes very clear that he is not, because he becomes a victim. He's murdered. And at this point, this is a big turning point for Rose in the story, because this is when she decides enough's enough. She's going to leave and go live with her daughter, at least while there's a murderer running loose. And she worries and tells Miller that she thinks he might be the murderer. He gets upset. She leaves. Everything seems to be falling apart. People are dropping left and right, and they can't seem to figure out this murder. And it's definitely like a cinching point for the story. She has a come to Jesus moment and decides, I need to go back. So she goes back, and the killer's waiting for her. And so this is like the end of the story. We figure out who it is. There's lots of suspense. It's very action-packed. And so towards the end, Rose really does become the quintessential final girl. She has to battle the murderer and save the day. And it is definitely a final girl story, and it's a fun read. I enjoyed it. It read a lot like a screenplay, though, right? Like you were saying, it felt like a screenplay. And he is a screenwriter. Not a screenplay writer, a screenwriter.
Yeah, I don't know. One of the two. People will get your point. Yeah, he's a screenwriter, and it was similar when I went to the book talk by Chuck Tingle. He said that he uses screenwriting beats for his stories. And there was someone else too. I think he even for like Taste Like Candy, the author uses screenwriting beats more for like the important plot points and turns. And it's interesting because I feel like within the contemporary horror books we've been reading, it's definitely something I've noticed. And it makes for a pacing that's very quick. A lot of the chapters or sections end on a like dun dun dun, which I imagine, in screenwriting, you got to like keep moving the action forward and like really have a lot of kinetic energy. And I feel like by following that format, you get that same ending of dun, 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 read to the next part.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I feel about it. I've just noticed it more and more because we've read pretty much back to back, I think, contemporary horror stories. So I'm starting to see some patterns between like the way that they're written. And part of what I struggled with in this book is it has that kind of screenplay drama string pulling you along, but it's also 416 pages. And I felt like there was too much dramatic tensioning because sometimes we got too much insight into how characters were feeling in the ways that made it more dramatic. But it felt like a screenplay where I felt like a lot of times people's emotions were described by what they were doing physically, like as if it was describing a scene to be acted out. I don't know. Did you agree at all?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Especially with the pacing. I feel like it's becoming a little formulaic with a lot of contemporary horror. And I don't know if it's a little problematic. I could see that where you get tired of it and you don't want to, like, part of the joy of horror is that it can be and do anything. And if we're going to start seeing it become really formulaic in how it's structured, then that's typically in horror films, that's when it becomes comedic and becomes a trope. And then you make fun of it and move on, right? Like the woman's running and she trips and she falls and then she just lays there and screams. That used to be normal in slashers. Same with the car not starting. And then it got overused to the point of, okay, now it's a trope. It's funny. It's like, oh, of course the car isn't going to start. I'm wondering maybe if that's what you're referring to, that's what you're seeing in these novels as well. The like point. Okay, I know what's coming now because this is the formula that is being structured around it. I
think part of it is what I've noticed is with some of this contemporary horror, it feels like as I'm reading it, I can see the movie play out in my head, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But in this case, I felt like this book would be a great movie because it would solve some of the issues that you talked about earlier, where it's like occasionally they do talk about what it's like to be old and retired and their ailments and their relationships. But then there'll be moments where the way they talk and the things they're doing feels younger somehow. Like there is that age disconnect where I think a movie would solve that.
Yeah, I could see that too. Like I was just thinking of one of the scenes where one of the retirees jumps out of a window And I remember thinking when I was reading that, like, what? Come on, absolutely not. And he'd like break a hip or something. But if you did that in a film, you could make it work to where it would be a little funny. Like he's like, oh shit, that hurt, you know, and like
you
that
can convey that information visually.
Exactly, which is a little more difficult to do in a book. So I can, and I agree. I think it would be a great movie, probably more so than a novel.
Yeah, I think it would work well as that. I think part of it too is I like books, and it's hard to say this.
You like books?
I like books. I don't know how to describe it, but I like books that do what they do well because they're books, if that makes sense. And not all the time.
Not really, honestly.
Okay. Does that just
Sorry,
mean I like...
No, I don't know what the hell you just said there. I like books that do what they do well. That's what you said.
Well, like you couldn't make a movie out of a Gene Wolfe book because the way that it's structured and written and all that is so idiosyncratic to the form of being a book that it wouldn't translate well. And I don't want to say I wouldn't want every book to be like that, but when I read books that make me think of directly translate to a movie, it's cool and it keeps me wanting to turn the page, but it feels like a medium that is mimicking another medium. Maybe I'm not describing myself well, but
I think I see what you're saying, but I feel like you can do a lot with books, right? I feel like you could even turn The Fisherman or Short Stay in Hell into good movies.
Yeah, The Fisherman's a good example. It could be a good movie, but I feel like that book works really well as a book, like with the way that it's structured.
I think you just like things to be more literary.
I think maybe that's what I'm saying.
I think that's what you're stuck on because
maybe
this is, yes, it was a long book. It was 400 pages. It's a long book, but it reads contemporary. It's contemporary horror as opposed to literary horror. Yeah. And I think you prefer the fancy word usage
give me that fancy
and the symbolism that's maybe more buried in the themes and such and not so in your face. Like, here's the story. We're moving from point A to point B and having it be maybe more.
Yeah, and I want more of that. You know what it comes down to? We've talked about this before, but I want that psychological depth because I guess that's another place where books excel in, like, compared to movies where you can really dig into those inner thoughts of characters in a way that's difficult in a movie. And I feel like with some of this contemporary fiction, because it has more of a screenplay, keep the action moving quick pace to it, there's less room for that psychological development. It's more about the psychology behind actions than like psychology for the purpose of delving deep into character.
Yeah, and there's a place for that. There's a place for all different
and
types.
It's not an Autumn Springs retirement home massacre. That's not what it's for. That's not what it's trying to do.
Right, exactly. So, and I think that's maybe, the difference there is it's just not necessarily your type of horror.
Yeah, it was a fun one, and it was a good one for October.
Yeah, I wanted a slasher, and I couldn't resist a retirement home slasher, so here we are. I think it would definitely be an interesting film. I wonder too if part of it is because of the trend of Hollywood horror that's going on right now. Like I feel like I've seen so much Hollywood horror and it reads Hollywood, right? Like a Hollywood manuscript almost, like it's meant to be made into a movie. And I wonder how much of that is an influence and also how much. Well, obviously he is a screenwriter, so that's going to influence him. But then also, like, how many authors are hoping that their books will be turned into movies, and so therefore write it so that it would be appealing to do such, right? Because I don't know, is that the dream?
Yeah, I'm sure that's a thought. Well, I mean, whether or not it's the dream, I think that's a good way to make a good chunk of money as a writer, right? If you can get something adopted and turned into a movie.
You definitely widen your audience because a lot more people watch movies than read books.
Yeah. So I would definitely think whether or not it's cynical, it's probably just, writers of all eras have had motivations behind what they write. And I think with the prevalence of just movie making and streaming and all that, it's a lot more believable to think that if you write a story that reads well, that it could get picked up and turned into a movie. I'm sure the chances are still very low, but probably not as low as they have ever been, right? There are more opportunities for
there are more people
filmmaking.
More companies, more options.
Yeah.
And also there might be the hopes to draw in readers who are not necessarily big readers and really like movies and like how movies are structured and are just trying to pull in that audience.
I want to know how many
That style of
people
reader.
of retirement home age have or will read this book, because that would be fun.
I mean, that would be, yeah, I would be interested to get a perspective of someone in the age group that these characters are and see, you know, what their thoughts are on the believability of these characters' age, as opposed to me looking at it from a younger perspective. I'd be curious about that. Maybe I'll convince my mom to read it. Mom, will you read this, please?
It's a long one.
So I can talk about you on the podcast like I'm doing right now.
I think you'd have to talk to somebody who's spent a few years there, though, in this retirement home.
In a retirement home?
Thing.
Yeah, I suppose my mom's not even 70 yet, so sorry, Mom. I take it back.
You have just 12 more years to read the book.
Yeah, I'll give it. I
whatever.
know. I'll ask your dad. Your dad would love this.
Oh my God, he probably would. That's a good one.
That'd be funny.
My dad writes retirement home based short stories for the newsletter at their retirement home. Not
They're
horrific.
not horror. Yeah, they're not horror.
But still.
That's not really a genre. But that's okay.
But he uses clip art, so you know it's at a retirement home.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, this was a fun read. I'm excited for the next couple ones, which is to say that I'm excited about the next book coming up, because it is not contemporary. It's an oldie, and it's an oldie that I have not read yet. We are going to be talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, coming out.
Classic Gothic horror.
Yep, 1818, I think, is when it was written. I just started reading the intro to the book.
Good job. Nice memory.
Yeah, look at that. I think I was reading the intro while waiting for the coffee to brew the other day.
Are you reading the one that I defaced for my Gothic literature course?
No.
Ah, okay.
I don't think. Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean like you have writing and highlighting in it? Yes.
Yes, that's called defacing a book. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, it is the defaced one. But a book like Frankenstein, being defaced is part of the charm.
Well, and we have multiple copies of this book, and it's not like it's hard to come by. But yeah, I figured fourth time's the charm. It was finally time to take notes in the book, and it was I specifically got that one for my class. So
yeah, I'm excited for this conversation for a few reasons. Amber has read it 4 times, as she just said, and does not.
It will be 5.
Does not have a high opinion of the book.
That's not
okay. Maybe that's not the right phrasing.
Not having a high opinion
doesn't like
is
it.
incorrect.
I
do not
true.
like this book.
Okay, there's that. I have not read it, and we're both excited to see the Guillermo del Toro movie adaptation that's in theaters now, but we're just going to watch it on streaming when it comes out on the 7th, which is just a few days before the 11th when this episode will come out. So we'll talk a little bit about that movie, which I'm excited to see. I read that there's no CGI in it. It's all practical effects, and Oscar Isaac's a great actor.
By the way, I'm going to interrupt you. I love that we're backtracking and seeing more and more of that. Like, fuck AI, fuck CGI. Let's go back to the good stuff. More like a stop motion, more practical effects.
It just looks cool when you see something that you know is made.
Better. Yeah.
And it's not even just being like knowing that it's made, but it just the look of it is just so much cooler. So yeah, Frankenstein is going to be a fun one. And since we brought that up, follow it up with this book was my choice, a book of short stories, North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballingrud. Ballingrud.
That's what
I'll get that pronunciation down when we actually do the episode.
And that'll be fun. That'll be our first short story collection.
Yeah. And this author is awesome. I'm really excited for Amber to read him. I've read several of his short stories, and Crypt of the Moon Spider, which just had a sequel come out.
He has beautiful covers too.
Yeah.
I love his cover art.
Yeah, he's really good. So that's going to be fun. And then followed by Candy Cane Kills.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into some Christmas horror on December 9th by Brian McAuley, who's a new author to me. So
he also just came out with Breathe In, Bleed Out, which is very popular on Instagram right now. So he's getting a lot of traction, which is great. It's always good. And what's also cool is that Candy Cane Kills was published by a local publisher here in the Portland area, Shortwave.
Oh, cool.
Shortwave Books, which is, yeah, it's always fun to have local. And they're also doing really, really well. Shortwave Books. They're starting to creep up on the bigger indie publishers.
Oh, yeah?
So that's fun to see as well. Yeah. So I'm excited for that one. I read the first, so this is the Candy Cane Kills is the second book of the VHS series that Shortwave does. And I read the first one a couple months ago, and they have actually, I think the sixth book is coming out in November as well. So it's a series I feel like it's kind of like Goosebumps for adults, but each book is generally by a different author. Like there's Candy Cane Kills 2, which is also by McAuley. Generally, each book in the series is written by a different author. So it's fun. It's a clever, the covers are cool. It's a clever idea. So I'm looking forward to Candy Cane Kills. This one has been on my TBR for a while. And I'm actually, I hate to admit it, I'm kind of ready for some like spooky winter reads. Like, what is wrong with me? It's not even Halloween yet, and
It's because you've been seeing Christmas ornaments
fucking capitalism
around since August.
Like,
so
Halloween stuff has been on clearance like since the end of September. So I guess they're really forcing, it's like brainwashing you to be excited for Christmas time, I guess. I don't know. I don't like it. Anyway, I am looking forward to the book though.
So what have you been reading?
Oh, this and that here and there.
Yeah, sure.
I have a pretty good list. I finally finished The Werewolf of Fever Swamp with My Child by R.L. Stine. That one was fun. I hadn't read that in a long time. Those do take a while though, since it's bedtime reading. He tends to fall asleep when I'm not done reading for the night, but so it goes. I think that took like a month to read this book that I could read in one sitting. But anyway, I also read some novellas and short stories. I read In the Tall Grass, which was Stephen King and Joe Hill. That was very short. And it's like about these people who go in the tall grass and then they get lost and stuck, and it's cool. I enjoyed it. And I had not read anything written by Stephen King and Joe Hill, like together. Father-son duo. So cool. It's so cute. And then another short one that I read was Nothing But Blackened Teeth. I finally got that off my TBR. That's by Cassandra Khaw. That's been taunting me for a very long time. I was very much looking forward to this book, and unfortunately it wasn't really my favorite. And looking at it afterward on Goodreads and Storygraph, it doesn't have the best reviews. But I think for me, my main problem with it was that there was a lot of Japanese terminology, which isn't a bad thing. But because there was so much, I started to get confused as to what each word meant. I felt like it needed like a glossary of terms to help me remember, because I put it down for a minute. I didn't read it in one sitting. So I'd read it in bed, and then I'd pick it up and be like, what does that word mean again? And I didn't feel like looking it up, so I kind of got lost sometimes. Also, her prose is unique. She kind of has her own style in the same regard as Stephen Graham Jones, where I feel like you have to kind of get into it, and it can throw you off if you're not used to it. Let's see, what else did I read? I read The Unworthy by Augustina Bastarrica, right? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job there.
That was a really, really good book. She also wrote Tenders the Flesh, and so I wanted to read this right away because I loved that book. And this one was very, very good as well. Very different, but also post-apocalyptic. Great commentary on our social norms and failings. This one was a very religious-esque book, which was funny because I also had just recently read American Rapture. So I'm like, what is with me in the post-apocalyptic religious books all of a sudden? But I guess that's my theme this year. So I would definitely recommend that one. That one was really, really good. I think you would like that one a lot.
Yeah, I want to read it. Definitely check out our episode on Tender as the Flesh.
Yeah,
because that was a great one.
That was great. I read Something in the Walls by Daisy Pierce. That was a really good one. And then lastly, I read Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. And I didn't realize this one was Irish, but it wasn't. She's an Irish author, and it takes place in Dublin. And it's got a bit of, it was a little bit like Little Shop of Horrors, where they work in it's a florist who like creates this thing that becomes sentient and wants to eat people and stuff. It was a really cool book. I enjoyed it. But yeah, that's all the stuff I finished reading. We've decided I'm not going to talk about books I've started. Because...
so this is funny. I looked at the notes for this episode, and you had 6 books on there, and I was like, okay, you can only talk about books you've actually finished reading. And she has.
I read
and she's
all
like,
those.
I actually have. And the one book I'm going to talk about is one that I haven't started reading yet. So...
And to boot, like I've been editing a lot. Did I say that wrong?
No, you did. It's just like, that's something, I don't know, a cowboy says. It's just...
Or someone living in a retirement home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I
mean, it's good. You're an editor,
lots of words rolling around in my head. What can I do? I love it. I love reading. So here we are.
The book that I have that I have
what have you been reading?
I have not yet read is Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1. This is the Alan Moore Swamp Thing run comic book.
Very cool.
Came
cover.
out in the 80s, maybe. I like Alan Moore's writing. He's awesome. You probably know him from Watchmen. And I mentioned on a recent episode, I read Providence recently, which was really good. H.P. Lovecraft horror. And apparently he has a really good run on the Swamp Thing. And I keep seeing this at the library, but they never have the first one.
That is always true at the library, no matter what series it is. They never have the first book.
Yeah, so I figured I'd just pick it up. And I actually picked it up at Powell's while I was there for a Jeff Vandermeer book talk. He just had Absolution come out in paperback, so he was talking to Amy Stewart, I think was her name, who writes about botany, like nonfiction, biological botany kind of stuff, which fits in with his kind of writing, especially in the Southern Reach trilogy, which I've read. And yeah, while I was there, I picked up this book. And then he signed my Annihilation and Absolution copies. So that was cool.
I wonder if that would have been intimidating for him talking to an actual botanist. Like
I don't
does
know.
He know his stuff
It
well
sounded
enough
like they
to feel
knew each other well.
Oh, okay. Maybe she was his...
botany supervisor, contact or something.
Yeah.
It was fun.
But he likes Portland, right? You were telling me he likes
I don't know. He's, I think, from Tallahassee.
That's not Portland.
Right, correct. But he said that Portland is like a second home to him, and he spent a lot of time here. And the Southern Reach trilogy is vaguely set in the Pacific Northwest, and I think some of his other works are as well. He talked about one time when he was driving down the Oregon coast. Oh, that's right. He was driving down the Oregon coast, and he stayed in an old lighthouse. And while he was there, he was writing some of the lighthouse scenes in the second Southern Reach book, which is really cool.
So again, like The Shining, but also like James Joyce writing Ulysses.
Yeah. So that was cool. And that led me to picking up Swamp Thing, which hopefully I'll read and talk about when we discuss Frankenstein, because they're kind of similar monsters, right? At least in terms of being big and green.
Universal monsters.
One's from the swamp, the other's from the castle or the village. Yeah.
What?
Well,
are you thinking of Dracula from the
Frankenstein?
castle?
Well, are they in a castle? Aren't they in a castle?
What? No.
In Frankenstein? Well, where are they? Just in a house?
I have an idea.
Aren't they at the top of a hill?
How about you read the book and then we'll discuss it?
Okay, fair enough.
There's a plan.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you when we talk about Frankenstein.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, And let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.